Hey guys, welcome. Along with my video games, I'm gonna try to do some other stuff. I'm going to try to record some dramatic readings of terrible, terrible, terrible porn. Sorry about the music there at the beginning. Maybe I'll try and find a way to edit it out. But fuck it, I don't care. It's whatever. So if you haven't seen my channel in the past, I started reading this series called Pornucopia, and I had to stop because eventually it got to a point where the author had published it. I'm still trying to figure out how, because it's just awful. But I shouldn't be surprised, because I read things like The Gingerbread Bang, and that was published too. The only reason I got to read that was because a friend sent me a copy, and I really just didn't want to pay for it. Pornucopia was just so bad that it was so good that I had to purchase it. During these readings, what I do is I have food with me. This time I have something easy, I guess, to eat. I have two things with me just in case I run out of the first. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. And I have some potato chips. I try to eat, like, random things. Like, one time I read some porn and I had cereal. And just to see if I can hold it down with what the story's doing. And I haven't run into too many challenges. I have no idea how to open this thing. Let's see. It's, oh, no. Oh, there it is. I can do things too! Yay! So, we're going to start reading from Chapter 2. If you want to see Chapter 1, and I'll put a link somewhere. I'm just going to point randomly, but I don't know where the fuck I'm going to put it. Because I can put it anywhere I want! Okay, so Chapter 2, Demonstration. Which girl do you want to have it? She asked seriously as she lifted off him. For a moment his organ was open to the sky. Pryor sat up hurriedly, packed in his apparatus together with an inadvertent handful of sand, and zipped up his fly. Have what? Your donation. I have to do it within half an hour, usually, or too many sperm cells die and it can't take. I don't have refrigeration capacity the way my northern cousins do. Of course, my whole bodies are icy cold, which makes collection difficult, except in the cases of the most determined dreaming sinners. The kind who would shoot off into icebergs if they had the right sized holes in them. What the fuck? And her period has to be right too. The supervisor's very finicky about such details. You mean you're serious about this succubus-incubus bit? It's not just a come-on? Of course it's a come-on. You came. I got on, she said, making a moe? What the fuck? Her lips were very expressive. She probably knew how to use them in her profession, too. Hurry up, make a choice. Someone's sleeping, of course. He tried to call her bluff. Don't you have to convert? To incubus? Just watch me carefully. I can't be too obvious, obviously. People would stare, and we aren't supposed to attract attention to ourselves. Not in a business connection, anyway. A demon can get herself burned. That way. Why is there a comma? Are you going to choose? Pryor looked about. Time had passed, and either some of the girl children had blossomed into nubility, or the beach fauna, not right now, AVG, had benefited from some turnover. But in his present sated state he found this interesting primarily in an intellectual way. He had no particular urge to impregnate any of the pregnable. In fact, the notion was a trifle disgusting. Not that it would come to that. Succubi were creatures of folklore. This doll had had her fun, and spun him a fairy tale, while he, no fairy, had spun into her tale. And now he would play the game out until she broke, and maybe she never would remember what she had intended to charge him for the occasion. Her, he said, gesturing to the adjacent matron, now blissfully snoring as the sun cooked her flesh. She's too old and ineligible. Hysterectomy. I can tell from her. She should be eager for it then. And I want to see how you do it. And see what she did. And if she did it, too. But the supervisor. Your, load isn't legitimate anyway. Because I wasn't really asleep. So you might as well ditch it before you get in trouble for carrying contraband. She looked angry, then shrugged. All right, skeptic. You lie down on your side facing her and pretend to close your eyes, so no one knows you're watching. I'll set it up so you can see, but no one else can. Pryor nodded. Despite his cynicism, life stirred slightly in his loin again. He had called her bluff and she wasn't backing down. What sort of show would she put on now? She walked away as he lay down. With each step she took, she seemed to change. Her lovely broad hips became narrow, her hair shorter, her chest flatter. She paused to adjust her dress, and it was a pair of culottes, or even Bermuda shorts. As much out of place as this beach was her skirt had been, but still unremarkable. Lots of people wore inappropriate clothes at the beach, and some walked the shoreline in full dress clothing. Were there incubi among them, unsuspected? By the time she reached the supine matron, she was male. Pryor had trouble believing this. God, I can fucking read. But his eyes were quite positive about it. The incubus kneeled beside the woman as though asking her a question. No one on the beach paid attention except Pryor. The incubus then moved over casually until he was astride the woman. What? And still no one noticed, and she did not wake. He must have put a small sleep spell on her. No doubt incubi, and succubi of course, had dependable ways to keep their subjects passive, except sexually, for the operation. Assuming such magical creatures really existed. Assuming that this was one such, Pryor was still alert for some deception, though his disbelief was somewhat shaken. If what he had seen was a trick, it was one hell of an illusion. Then the incubus brought out a tiny knife, or maybe it was merely a sharp fingernail, and sliced away a portion of her bathing suit, exposing the pudendum. He placed his body so that only Pryor could see what was happening. Still, it could be an act, a farce, and the sleight of hand could not proceed much farther. In due course, the incubus opened his own apparel and brought out a massive phallic instrument. This was no trick. Pryor saw it coming erect while the incubus kept hands off. Had he not watched the creature every moment, but certain that no substitution had been made? Pryor would not have believed this. Now he was convinced. The hungry female genitals that had sucked in his protoplasm were now aggressive male genitals, eager to spew it forth again. The incubus lowered his boom and brought it to bear on the fatty crevice between the matron's legs. It looked far too big to fit, but slowly he eased it in, pushing, stroking, sliding, jogging. The woman moaned, stirred, but the incubus touched her eyelids with one hand, and she did not awaken. In fact, she was smiling. Pryor wondered what dreams she might be having, half as phenomenal as the reality. The tremendous penis hove to like a slow diesel into a tunnel, burying half its column in the tight aperture. Then 3/4 ho, Pryor thought. That female would be sore tomorrow. Excuse me, I'm just eating some food. I'm a little hungry. After that, he couldn't see the detail, because the incubus thing blocked the view. But the motions of the merging bodies suggested that the rest of the shaft was finding or making its lodging. The woman's heavy torso shook with the impact of full penetration, and she writhed with something reasonably resembling ecstasy. Her knees came up and spread further apart. Her hands groped for the point of contact. She had probably never had so much meat inside her at one time before. Ejaculation! The incubus plunged, withdrew, plunged again. The woman groaned aloud as the piston retreated. Then she made a muffled scream, and as the spasm distended her, Pryor was sure the orgasm dwarfed her previous experience, if indeed she had experienced orgasm before. That kind usually thought pleasure in sex was unpatriotic. What? Unpatriotic. Okay. Meanwhile, beach activity continued. No one wondered what the strange man was doing to the sleeping woman. Or maybe they just didn't care. Two girls walked by, glanced across, saw, and went on. It was none of their business. Pryor realized that almost anything could happen on a public beach, including screaming rape, and nobody would react. He glanced down at his own trunks, wherein his scant 4 inches throbbed with second wind. Certainly he was not one to bring a woman to life like that. There was no way 4 inches could match 8, except perhaps in endurance. The incubus let it soak for a moment, while an elderly couple walked by, then drew out the gross member. The fit was still so tight that Pryor could see flesh stretching. Then the organ snapped out with a pop that caused a passing child to glance curiously, hopping for bubble gum. Or hoping, excuse me. No such luck. The incubus stood up, shook off his flaccid extremity, fed it back into the shorts, and ambled away. The matron remained as she was, legs spread wide, suit slit open with the crack, hands touching the greased labia. I don't know medical terms. No one noticed except the child, who didn't care, and Pryor, who had mixed emotions. By the time the incubus reached Pryor, he was female again. The bitch had gonorrhea, the succubus exclaimed, outraged. Do you want to do it again? Pryor's renovated erection abruptly died. Renovated. What? This creature, by her own admission, was now teeming with activated venereal disease. I had another load since that one was wasted on an eligible receiver, she said. You're handiest since you put me up to it, though it's bound to be anemic so soon after my last collection. Now I don't mind how I get it, cunt, mouth, hand, or whatever, or which form I take it in, male, female, neuter. You mean you can take it as an incubus too? Pryor was repelled and fascinated, the one feeding the force of the other. And you have a neuter side? A neuter state? Oh yes, oral collection is invariably effective. And of course there's anal. Some men prefer neuters. They're like undeveloped young girls or castrates. Tastes vary. Sometimes we have a bugger, the donor, to get him to put out. I can show you. I guess I'll donate in the normal fashion. Pryor said quickly. He wasn't anxious to have that 8-inch member, stirring up his twitching colon. He was dead set against buggery anyway. I could suck you off, she said helpfully. That little marvel of yours makes it easy. You'll take it in your pussy or not at all, he informed her defensively. He didn't normally use lowbrow terms like that, but her condescending attitude was getting to him. And not here. Come to my car. She made another moe and followed him over the sand and across the weedy fringe to the parking lot. His dime had run out, and there was a ticket on the windshield. He had tarried on the beach longer than originally intended. This ticket was particularly embarrassing, because he was professionally connected to the parking industry, and this would look very bad on his record. Like a dentist having a rotten tooth, or a grocery manager confusing the price of beans with that of caviar. though the latter was not hard to do these days, with the prices rising so fast that beans now went for caviar prices. "Shit!" he said, employing the basest expletive he knew, wondering if the succubus would be shocked. "We supernaturals don't have to eat," she said equably, "so we seldom have to defecate. But if that sort of thing stimulates you, I meant the meter. It stuck a ticket on my car. That's $1 fine." "Oh, I can fix that. We fuck up machines all the time. Let me get my ass on it here." "I'll pay the fine," he cried as she hoisted her skirt and lifted one shapely leg. There were whistles from a neighboring car. "Leave it alone," she shrugged. "It's your dough. Just get in the car, why don't you?" Pryor was anxious to get away before more of a crowd collected. He drove her to a private park, certain by this time that he didn't want her at his apartment. She climbed onto the back seat, got on hands and knees, let her breasts dangle low, bared her bottom, excuse me. Ooh, oh, what's the wrong bared? And he mounted her from behind and jetted somewhat feebly into her upraised aperture. She was still a luscious hunk of distaff flesh, but he had seen what he had seen there on the beach, knew what he knew, and it shook him up quite apart from the VD threat. Luscious hunk. As his shrinking penis sucked loose, he realized that she had assumed the neuter form, breastless, narrow-hipped, hairless. He felt like a pederast. He didn't like pederasty. "Now you're done. Get out," he said shortly. That's it. I mm-hmm. Hey, see, it wasn't as, like, naughty as the first one, but still, what? I don't expect half the stuff that's happening in this. I don't know what to expect. But we've read chapter 2, we've done it together, and we've got great stuff going on. I'm going to edit some stuff into there, hopefully, and I'll see you guys next time on the next reading. Expect these at least once a week, like most of my game recordings, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.